picks it up on his own. Come here. Still has the line on the wall, knocks it out of the air. Emmeline picks up the passed ball. Emmeline going back. Hooked in there by Anya, just misses. Emmeline now.
One of the things in regards to saddles, saddle repair, saddle maintenance are the billets. Over the course of the time one has a saddle, they change their billets probably the most often of any part on the saddle. It's along the lines of changing your tires for the time you own a car or vehicle. And in the case of this saddle, it was brought in to have the outside billets changed, as well as having the centers reset. Reason being is the stitches over a course of time will wear out even before the billets will, from fatigue and from actual friction if there's a lot of movement going on inside the saddle. These were changed out, and while I have the billets showing here, as far as the question of fitting, when you have a saddle or a new girth for a horse, the best thing to do is to actually fit the girth from the center of the billet down at the very beginning, because as time goes on, the billet will stretch downward as the girth will start to stretch in the opposite direction. So if you're in the middle or in the lower third, you have at least some holes to grow up into. If you're starting from the top and this girth starts to stretch and the billets are stretching at the same time, you'll run out of holes before you even run out of the lifespan of the billet itself. So that allows you to get a little more life out of this piece of equipment. Also, if you change horses or you've sold a horse and you still of course have the same equipment, you can always get the girth shortened and find a new fitting and sizing for the girth as well. So there's another way of saving some money and extending the life of a piece of equipment that may just be sitting or hanging on a wall instead of being used. Well, I'm sure it was far back when we were actually using the horse as a mode of transportation, and you would go from town to town and they were pretty far away. God forbid of one billet breaking, you always had a spare. And while we're on that subject, if that ever happens and you end up having to use either these two or these two, depending if one or the other breaks, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So this way the saddle is being pulled on equally on both sides until you can get the billets replaced and addressed. Okay, we're stitching in a set of billets in this saddle. Saddle had a nice year's worth of use. And this time of year the customer comes in to get in a new set, depending on how often you play. Depends on how often you need your billets replaced, of course.
What should you be looking at, Jim, when you're deciding whether to replace them?
A lot of times you'll see that they're rather obvious. I've had them come in where they've been looks like they literally got cut in half. Then you know you got to replace them. There's no doubt about that. The other thing is when the billet has torn holes, and what has occurred and what I've had come in is literally the one hole rips into the next one, and that's also a sign that that's enough of that. They need to be replaced. For example, the reason why we have a mobile location is for that convenience. So I've had players come in that day and they, their billets broke or something broke on the saddle that morning, and they're playing that afternoon, and they only have so many saddles. And for example, like a billet job is something that's a quick turnaround. A quick turnaround.
But what if they're not lucky enough to live in Florida?
Okay, well, then we have to ship it, and in most cases it takes longer to ship it to me and back to the customer than it does for me to do the job. And I've actually been in a situation where if the truck came in early enough in the day and I could get that saddle out that day, I've done that as well. So it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Okay.
A new set of billets, it's roughly a $75 to $100 job, depending on if we're just addressing 4 billets, 6 billets, how long it takes to open and close the saddle. Again, I equate this type of repair or maintenance, I consider it more maintenance than a repair, to changing a set of tires on your car or your truck.